After seeing Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity for the first time recently, I was extremely pleased with what I saw. I didn't buy into the hype of the film being an unprecedented game changer, introducing something completely new into the film industry, and I still don't. What I did think it achieved was complementing an incredibly fast-changing industry in terms of its stunning vistas and incredible attention to detail. The film centres around one character, Special Communications Officer Ryan Stone, played by Sandra Bullock, and in part, experienced space veteran Matt Kowalski, played by George Clooney. Anyone familiar with Cuarón's previous work, or the incredibly enjoyable Children of Men, will know that it's fairly typical for Cuarón to use a bare minimum cast in order to fully be overwhelmed by the film's atmosphere. This is illustrated perfectly in the opening scene, an incredible 17-minute long shot of Stone and Kowalski carrying out repairs on a telescope. It continues unbroken to the first significant event of the film. A rogue satellite explosion causes shrapnel to fly into orbit, causing Stone to fly off into a perpetual spin. Ergo, the one event forms the premise of the entire film. During these scenes of drifting in isolation, there is little to no communication between characters, or even NASA, who become frustratingly inactive for 90% of the film, and instead relies on having two of Hollywood's biggest names keep the audience interest peaked while the story settles into its natural, slower pace.
Houston, do you copy? Houston, this is Mission Specialist Ryan Stone. I am off structure and I am drifting. Do you copy?
Without ripping into Clooney's character too much, I got the distinct feeling he was only really there to explain some of the soon-to-be key plot points to Bullock's character, and by extension, the audience.
Yes.
All right. We have to make our way to the space station. Over there. It's a bit of a hike. We need to use their escape pod, the Soyuz, to get back to Earth. Agreed?
During the brief moments of dialogue between Stone and Kowalski, I would love to have heard more backstory on Stone's own life and the reason she got into the space program, as she only briefly mentions the traumatic loss of her child.
I had a daughter. She was 4. She was at school playing tag, slipped, hit her head, and that was it. Stupidest thing.
Well, it's day one, and I'm bumping my way down Bourbon Street looking for a sister of a friend of mine. The streets are full of people. I'm thinking there's no way I'm going to find this girl.
Proceeding to override?
Then all of a sudden, I look up, and there she is. I'm about to yell out. And I see she's holding hands with some short, hairy guy in board shorts and a Margaritaville shirt. And then I realize that this guy is not a guy.
Before I move on to what I consider to be the main theme of the film, it's worth saying that what I loved about its story was the discovery that came with following the character's every move. You never felt a step behind because the events played out in pretty much real time, and when something did happen, you were unsure of how to react, looking for a solution just as hard as the character on screen. Some of the later shuttle escape scenes were genuinely very exciting to watch and reminiscent of the distress felt in other space movies, such as 2001: A Space Odyssey or Alien, in the context of knowing the odds were stacked against them so highly.
Wait. 5, 4, 3. No, we're just driving. Let's go home.
One thing I definitely enjoyed about Gravity was the theme that seemed to keep cropping up, and a signature of Alfonso Cuarón, which is the significance of life and the journey that we all take to survive. Of course, part of the brilliance of Cuarón is leaving these details hidden in the aesthetics of the film. Some are very obvious, such as Stone mimicking the shape of a grown fetus in the womb. Or during the final sequence when Stone is forced out of the water, the source of all life, and takes her first shaky steps onto an unknown land, having overcome great odds to be there in the first place. Where the appreciation of life comes from is Stone's interaction with Kowalski. He never gives up on Stone, and even drags her, quite literally as well as metaphorically, to where she needs to be. He sees her as a person in need of a fresh start, being emotionally frozen after her daughter's death. She is kick-started into life by the fear of losing her own, and so the theme continues. As I mentioned, Cuaron's own thoughts on life and the importance we will have no matter what can't help but feed its way into a majority of his work, or at least inspire it. Maybe not in the way that Nolan does with some skill into character dialogue in relation to the human condition, but certainly with an unflinching look at humans trying to comprehend themselves and their own place in the world. It doesn't attempt to answer these questions, but do the opposite, and suggests perhaps the questions are not yet ready to be answered.